So, hey, Ryder's back, and Sumar's back. Oh, Sumar's dead. Oh, that is horrible. But List is here. God, I love recurring characters. I really do. I hate to keep hammering that point in, but this right here helps to demonstrate one of the things I like about that concept. One of the things I feel was absent from Deep Space Nine, which I've been complaining about for like the last year over in the Deep Space Nine stuff. There are a few recurring characters in DS9, but for the most part, they just show up once or twice and then they go away forever. It hurts my investment when there's a character I never see again. By contrast, a character I see all the time, even if they're in a minor role, helps make it more believable for me. I'd say it adds immersion, but I don't want to overuse that word. But you get the point. Anyways, so I had a theory I want to share. This episode kind of started making me think of it, and I wanted to share it as soon as I had the theory, so this is going to be a little off topic. The way the narrative is being structured, it feels like this is the beginning of the Rebel Alliance. But that almost doesn't make sense, right? I mean, the Rebel Alliance was a vast conglomerate of many different cells and groups across a huge structure of space and time. Even in the AU, that is true. In the EU, it took Bella Bliss, Organa, and Mothma to sit down and hammer everything out. But even in the AU, it still took Organa and Mothma, as well as several other forces combining together to make this structure happen. It could be argued with the new AU that it was at Rogue One, which was when the Rebel Alliance was formed instead of instead of A New Hope. But considering the time difference between Rogue One and A New Hope is like a couple hours, I don't think that's a big distinction at this point. Regardless, how could this tiny little local cell in one sector, which barely leaves its local area, actually be involved in starting the Rebel Alliance? So then I started thinking about it. It actually makes perfect sense. No, seriously. It's the concept of critical mass. The idea being that, as I've said before, there are many cells out there. Even within this sector, there are separate cells operating independent of each other. But imagine if one of those cells got big enough organization, enough personnel, enough ships, enough munitions, enough backing to actually be a significant, substantial threat. They could then, basically, it would then be so much easier for an actual alliance to start from a position of strength. Or let me put it to you another way. You remember in last, I forget which, I think it was last episode, I mentioned the problem of the rebel cells and how hard it is for them to coordinate, work together? Well, it's a lot easier when the other cell you're working with is very big and has demonstrable power backing it. One of the themes the series keeps hammering on over and over and over is how people will only join the Rebel Alliance when they think it has a chance of victory. That's been true since this whole show has started. So, if they hit critical mass, this could literally be the beginning of the Rebel Alliance. In a believable way, not just a narrative way. And I credit the logic there. Anyways, then we got Thrawn, who kills Sumar, which sucks. Notice their reactions, by the way, to that killing. Price is pleased. Excellent. Callus is horrified, which makes a degree of sense. And Thrawn's actions in this episode paint him in more of a villainous light than most of how he's been portrayed to date. Which, I mean, I get it. He is a bad guy. We need to establish him as a bad guy. Because what he's doing from a purely cold calculus perspective actually makes sense. He is making a very visible and obvious demonstration of why he is no longer tolerating sabotage. And as the military commander of a production facility, he needs to make sure there is no sabotage, especially on his precious project, which I'll talk about later. So, I'm kind of with that. It makes sense. It's just, honestly, even with that perspective, I don't think he needed to kill the guy. As soon as it started overheating and being like, oh god, it would have been like, alright, my point is proven. This is a defective unit that you yourself have inspected. So, either off to the jail or I'm just going to shoot you, one of the two. You get the idea, and now it turns to everyone else. And of course, his answer to them is very obvious. You are now going to personally test everything you make. In other words, forcing a personal investment. Because it's either incompetence or it's deliberate sabotage. But from an outside perspective, it doesn't matter which it is. Not really. What matters is that it's fixed. There's also an interesting thing here. I've mentioned several narrative themes that are going throughout this show. And my favorite by far, and it's been throughout most of the show, but it's really been uprising in Season 3, is the difference between simplicity and complexity, right? I've talked about that several times myself. This is one of the reasons I like Thrawn as he's presented here, because he is very firmly on the complexity side of things. He espouses the idea of thinking rather than reacting, and actually processing and putting pieces together rather than going with the simple and easy approach. Notice Governor Price, who continues to not impress me, by the way, is someone who, she doesn't figure out what's going on, she has no idea what the process is, and when she finds out, oh my god, there might be a rebel, we must interrogate everyone, she just defaults to the simplistic line of reasoning, the hammer. It is Thrawn who understands that a spy can be used as an ally, whether they want to be or not, but also is willing to look under the surface, as the demonstration with the Walker so aptly gave. And of course he's studying art. In fact, you'll notice most of the art he's studying is specifically a Phoenix Squadron. Anywho, by the way, I just feel like pointing out, notice how once again the droid gets away with literal sabotage in front of everyone, and he's just told to go to maintenance. God, nobody pays attention to droids. I'm really starting to think that the writers are aware of this and are doing it on purpose. Because holy crap. And then they find out that Callus is Fulcrum. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, we know. We all called that. We all knew that was coming. It's kind of awesome, though. And I mean that sincerely. It shows that Callus is still continuing to develop as a character and that he's willing to go this far. In fact, if anything, it almost irritates me how much that Ezra and Kanan kind of abuse him. Now, I get why they're irritated and frustrated at this guy who was a thorn in their side for so much of their lives, but that's not how you make alliances. That's not how you make friends, for that matter. And I know what you're thinking, well, they don't need to make friends. Maybe not, but they definitely need to make alliances. And to be perfectly blunt, the only real reason why Callus, at least in my interpretation, has decided to switch sides is because of friendship, camaraderie, honorability, and teamwork, that other big theme of this show. Acting like a dick to him and not embracing him, that threatens to push him away from that. And that is a stupid and foolish move, especially since it's being done solely to satisfy your own petty need for vengeance. I thought better of that, of Ezra and Kanan, but then again, maybe I shouldn't have. After all, this is a kid's show. So yeah, only one more thing to talk about. The best starfighter in the galaxy. I love the TIE Defender so much. It's such a thing of beauty. I want a model of it someday. One of these days, that's one of my goals. You know, when I actually finally have a real studio set up somewhere, I want to have a model of a TIE Defender on that because it's such a pretty ship, and it's so fun to fly. It's also kind of cheating. It is basically the cheat vessel. I mean, you think a B-Wing is overpowered or an X-Wing? No, 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 no. A TIE Defender is ridiculous. The only thing more ridiculous than a TIE Defender is a missile boat, and we're not even going to talk about that. But this is finally a continuation of something that was mentioned several times in Season 1, and was actually a very minor plot point before it was forgotten in Season 2. The reason why the Empire is establishing so much interest and infrastructure into Lothal. It's to turn it into a factory for producing those things. I imagine that'll come up in the future, so we'll see where that goes next time.